The majority of gym goers who struggle to build muscle and struggle to get stronger, they do not understand this one simple thing, which is how to rest and recover properly. Now in today's video, I'm going to go into a deep dive in why rest and recovery matters the most. If you're interested, let's get into it. Right. In today's video, we are talking about rest and recovery, why it matters, especially when you're trying to build muscle. Now, rest is heavily overlooked, especially in the gym that I work on. I see so many people go from one exercise to the other and not giving themselves adequate time to rest. Especially when we're talking about muscle building, the muscles haven't got time to adapt and recover well in between sets, which then of course leads to overtraining. Now, when we talk about the science of rest and recovery, look, I'm not going to bore you with crazy amounts of detail. I'm not going to overcomplicate this for you, but in essence, when you're pushing yourselves and you're training really hard, in every single exercise you do, what happens is you create microscopic tears in the muscle. Now, the rest plays a part on healing and repairing those muscles. Now, if you don't give them adequate time to recover, you are more or less undermining your progress. You're kind of almost shooting yourself in the foot here, because the last thing you want to do is overtrain that muscle to the point where it cannot recover, and then that leads to injury. So throughout this entire video, I'm going to be talking about some misconceptions. I'm going to talk about some common mistakes and some practical applications to doing rest in terms of the type of weight you use, the type of exercises you do, in terms of rep ranges, and how long you should ideally rest in between those rest sets, if that makes sense. And like always, if this video in somehow in any way interests you or gives you some form of insight into how you should be recovering, all I ask in return is just drop a like, comment below and subscribe and hit that notification bell, so for the next time I post a video, you guys will be made aware, and yeah, we'll go from there. When we talk about rest and recovery, a lot of people have this idea, or they've come to this notion, that the more I push myself and the more I lift, the more I move, the more progress I'll make. That is far from the contrary. The reason why that is going to hurt you in the long run than it is going to give you, general satisfaction, is that that leads to what we call overtraining. Now, overtraining is definitely a real thing, especially unless you're a bodybuilder or unless you're someone who's on the juice. You're not going to recover as fast as they do, right? You're not a mutant. Just understand that, okay? So us mere mortals, right, who are training naturally all their life, who's too scared to even touch stuff like that, you're not going to recover as much as you would. So you're going to need to take some time to recover. So on average, most people rest for a minute, but you rest what's relative to you. At the end of the day, everyone's different. Not everyone is the same. Everyone's mechanics, everyone's cardiovascular systems, and all the other bits and pieces. It takes time for one's individual to recover. So please bear that in mind, because resting is not a luxury, it's a necessity. You have to remember that, especially if you're trying to perform at the highest of all levels. You've got to bear that in mind. So be very wary when it comes to overtraining. Now, right now, I'm doing a barbell squat, okay? And today's leg day for me, okay? So while I'm doing a barbell squat, I'm taking into consideration the weight, the rep range that I'm focusing on, and the type of tempo I'm putting myself through. So even now, I'm a bit of out of breath because I've just done a couple sets already. But so for example, I'm gonna aim for 6 to 8 reps, nothing crazy. I'm gonna find tension. I'm able to leverage the most out of this. So even though this is not part of the workout, but you can still see anyways. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8. Now, in this instance, I feel slightly fatigued, but on average, I'm gonna rest between 1 minute to 1 minute 30, because on average, I find that around a minute to 1 minute and 30 seconds, I feel somewhat okay. I feel relatively recovered enough that I can do another set again for that same repetition, but not enough that I feel the cool down, I don't feel the progress being worked. So even though my legs are feeling somewhat fatigued, I'm not all the way there yet, because I'm allowing that rest and recovery to help me catch up a bit, so then I can perform even better on the following set. Now, in between this, you could stretch, so you can open up the quads a bit more. You can do some dynamic movements to get some movement in there, so you're not completely feeling really rigid and tight, but just enough that you still keep the warmth in the body, you keep the mobility going, you feel nice and pliable, and then you also feel strong enough to kill that next set. Give that a go. Cool. Just get that lined up for me if you can. Ready?
Can I go a bit higher?
No. Just do this. Okay. How's that?
How do you zoom in?
You don't zoom in. Just you can't do it because
You're literally up to here.
Don't adjust this.
Okay.
Yeah? Because then you can just angle towards me. But you kind of want chest height, so I don't mind it being a bit more closer than normal. Cool. Okay, cool.
Why is it moving?
What do you mean, why is it moving? What do you mean? No, it's like that. It's because remember, it's a very old tripod and it's worn out a bit. So I'm looking to buy a new one until now, but I'll eventually get a new one. Go from there. Cool. Now, in this video, like I said before, if we're trying to build muscle, we're trying to get stronger, rest and recovery is just going to be super crucial on your part. Because the reason why it's going to be crucial is because I lost my train of thought. I have it. Why rest is important, it's for as long as I've been training here, it's completely baffled me why so many people who are adamant on getting stronger, who are adamant on getting bigger, who want to just build muscle and look good, they don't prioritize rest and recovery enough. Because rest is going to allow you to build the muscle in a much higher quality fashion. Right? It's going to allow you to get stronger because the recovery is going to allow you to get there as well. So you also have to bear this in mind that if you're trying to build muscle, you're trying to get strong, please prioritize your rest. Rest as long as your body tells you to, because at the end of the day, you can only listen to yourself. Now, one of the biggest issues I've found that when people don't rest and recover enough, they tend to do what we call overtrain. And overtraining is a very, very big deal because what that leads to do, it leads to burnout, it leads to stagnating in your goals, it leads to plateaus, and most importantly, and the most important part of this is that you have a higher likelihood or a higher chance in this sense to damaging the muscle. So, and the last thing you want to do is, let's just say you've done 3 months of considerably well-controlled progress to then mess it all up over something ego-driven by you not resting and recovering. That's going to set you back 6 months, and who knows how much is going to play in your psychological. So please bear that in mind. Rest and recover when it's really needed so you can perform at your best. Now, in my experience, I've been there in the sense where there's this push and pull when it comes to finding balance in terms of rest and recovery and finding the desire to continue to push. Now, I get it, especially when you're, doing really well in an exercise, you're feeling the intensity, you're feeling the pump. I get it, I've been there, but you need to learn to tame yourself. You need to learn to control your pacing of the workout. So if you're not resting adequately, you're only hindering your progress. You're only leading to a higher risk chance of injuring yourself, as well as the muscle breaking down to the point where it's going to be so much more harder for you to pack on that size. Now, the relationship between rest and muscle growth is pretty straightforward. Now, I'm going to go into the sciencey part of this, so bear with me on this one. If you're not interested, of course, you skip past this. I'm not really fast. But what happens is when we're breaking down said muscle or when we're pushing ourselves in the gym, what happens is these microscopic tears in the muscle fibers itself. And with the rest and recovery, that's just going to help us rebuild those tissues. So especially when we're trying to build the muscle, that rest and recovery portion, especially building the muscle, is going to play a big part into how big it's going to be, how well it's going to perform, and how much pressure we can put it under in the future. So you also got to take that into account. Now, there are many ways where you can rest and recover in other fashions. For example, sleep being the number one main thing in any person's recovery, because everyone does it. We all sleep. We all need to rest at one point, right? Because after a long day's worth of work, after an hour to 2 hours of grueling session, you need to go to bed, okay? You need to refuel, you need to recover, you need to get some adequate amounts of sleep. So while you're sleeping, what happens is that your internal hormones, the body hormones that your body produces, goes on this little journey where it starts to slowly help you recover, help you repair those tissues. And because you're not going to be training when you're sleeping, it gives enough time for the body to just go, okay, we're going to start building the repair process. And then next thing in the morning, you start to feel a little bit better, so then you can train as hard. Now, most of the time, many pitfalls, depending on the circumstances of your job, depending on your day-to-day, rest is relatively different for everybody. Now, the average, I tell people, including my clients, is get around 7 to 9 hours sleep. Most people don't have the luxury. Some people have insomnia, some people have these other medical conditions. I don't blame you. But to those who can get 7 to 9 hours of sleep, do so. At the end of the day, if your sleep is poor, not on par, when I tell you, and I say this with chest, your progress is going to suffer hugely. Okay, I cannot stress how much it's going to affect your ability to heal faster, recover well, to perform at your best. You just need to get adequate amount of sleep. You can't have one without the other. You can't just train hard and then get 3 hours worth of sleep, because all you're doing is you're susceptible to a higher risk of injury. Like I said earlier before, and I'm going to stress it again, you have to learn to rest adequately. So bear that in mind. Nutrition also plays a big part as well in terms of your recovery as well. So you also want to be at least eating really well. You can't be, training and all of a sudden you can go, back down a Big Mac, because that ain't going to do nothing. You're getting no nutrients that are going to be high quality. That's going to feed the muscles. That's going to help you grow and set the muscles, because all you're going to be doing is, like I said earlier, your muscles, when we train in it specifically, we put ourselves in what we call a catabolic state. So we're already breaking down on a regular basis. That's why we need those calories. So after you've done, let's just say, a heavy leg session or a heavy back session or a heavy chest session, you've completely torn the muscle to more or less shreds, if you will. And the pump is so real that you're going to want to get some adequate amount of protein, adequate of carbs, adequate amount of fats, as long as it fits within your macronutrients and you're split throughout the day. And you're going to use that nutrients to fuel you for the workout, but as well as help you rest and recover more properly. So getting the sleep, getting the nutrition right, as well as training adequately and making sure you're resting between sets is going to be vital to you recovering faster, pushing yourself harder, and perform at your best. So bear that in mind. I just remembered while I was doing another set. Now, another reason why the rest and recovery is going to be important is, even though we're talking about muscle growth, you also have to remember how much of a toll it takes on your joints, right? Because in my instance, for example, I've been trying to get to a 140 kilo bench, right? Without using any wrist straps, without using any other support systems that's going to help me propel. I just want it to be natural strength, comfortable for me enough that I can still rock with 140 weighing at the weight I'm doing now. But I've realized something. Without the proper recovery in between the sets I'm doing, the toll it's taken on my shoulder, it's the pain, you can't even begin to imagine how bad it can get, right? And especially in the early stages, when I was benching, when I was much younger, the shoulder for me was always a huge problem. I realized how much wear and tear I placed on the joints, the ligaments, the tendons around those said muscles. So you just have to bear that in mind. So especially if you're just going to keep pushing yourself and you're not going to give yourself time to rest and recover, your joints are going to take a big hit. So you're not going to be able to hit as hard or lift as heavy as you want, because you're going to get all those other muscles, all those other ligaments and those tendons and the joints in those specific areas, whether it be the knee, whether it be the hip, whether it be the shoulder, whether it be in the neck or any other place, even the hands and the wrists as well. It's going to hinder your ability to progress. So also listen to that as well. Take a second and listen to how much your joint takes a bit of a hit, right? So bear that in mind when you're trying to rest and recover as well. Now, I'm on to my next exercise now, which is lunges. I'm doing bodyweight lunges. I thought, you know what, while I'm coming to near the end of the workout, I'm feeling pretty fatigued. I'm feeling pretty happy with how the workout's gone in essence. I know I could have pushed a little harder, but then like I said, it's about rest and recovery. It's about knowing your limits. It's about knowing where you're at, where your threshold sits, and just kind of almost playing the ball, because not all the time, it's not going to be all the time where you're going to be able to push yourself every single time, right? You're not going to be able to give it 100%. Sometimes you're going to have off days, and sometimes you're going to feel like, you know what, this ain't me. But the fact that you show up, you take your time, you're building your 1%, if you will, right? And the rest and recovery, and I have to stress, and throughout this entire video, you're going to see me repeat why rest and recovery is so important, because I've been there, I've been with you guys, I've done the injuries, I've had to take time off, and I don't think, as of this moment, I don't think anyone more than me preaches about rest and recovery more than I do, to be fair. So you also have to bear that in mind as well. Now, let's use, for example, deadlifts as an example, right? Now, deadlifts is a very high intensity, high threshold, like very high output exercise. It's a compound movement first off, and it does require so many muscle groups to be worked here. You're working practically every muscle group, barring the chest actually, because technically the chest needs adduct, right? So you're hitting the lower body, you're hitting your core, you're hitting your lower back, you're hitting the upper back, you're hitting your arms, getting your shoulders, and you're also working your cardiovascular, right? Now, if let's just say we're going on, let's say, the heavier weights, right? You want to at least be able to rest between 2 to 3 minutes, so you can give your central nervous system a bit of a break, because right now it's just screaming alert, 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 alert. You've taken a bit of a stress, you've taken a bit of toll. So a longer rest isn't going to kill you. It's going to help you, especially when you go for another heavy weight. So in this instance, I, for example, would aim for, let's just say if you're doing a strength set, or what we call a powerlifting set or a power set, if you would, any reps between 1 and 6, you want to give yourself at least 2 to 3 minutes rest. Anything on the hypertrophy range, and these are ranges, by the way. The reason why I'm stressing these ranges is that this is all relative to the individual. You can rest 1 minute if you want to, but if your recovery is poor, give it another minute. Maybe give it an extra minute on top, just to give yourself enough time to go, feeling a little bit better, feeling somewhat recovered, and then you can push harder for the next set. So bear that in mind as well. But on another instance, just kind of almost like a little shameless plug, if you will, I filmed a common mistakes, critical mistakes to people that are trying to perform the deadlift and lift a little bit more when the deadlifts. So if you haven't seen that video, go check this video out. I'll link it somewhere into the video, so you can, click on it and go to it. So have a look. But one of the major issues that I also find when it comes to people not rest and recovery is that most people tend to stagnate hard. I think I mentioned it earlier in the video about stagnating in terms of burnout, and that leads to what we call plateauing. And we don't want to plateau, especially when we're trying to make consistent progress. So in this instance, in one instance, for example, when we're talking about progressive overload, and that's going to be another video for another time, but for those who already know what progressive overload is, if you're trying to progressively overload your weights every single week, by you resting and recovering is going to allow you to keep breaking through those plateaus. Eventually your body will adapt, and of course you won't be able to, progress, but you doing the active recovery, maybe taking some time off to kind of, recover a bit, if you will, give yourself enough time to completely feel repaired. When you get back into it, more than 9 times out of 10, most people have said that they tend to push a bit more harder than they did before. So also bear that in mind. So if you feel like you're about to plateau, maybe take a week off. It's not going to kill you. It's not going to hurt you. It's not going to hurt your gains in any way. As a matter of fact, it will probably end up skyrocketing your gains because you've given yourself time to actually proper repair and actually properly recover. Now, to avoid overtraining, you want to give yourself enough time to sleep. 7 to 9 hours, like I mentioned earlier. You want to get some proper food in you. You want to make sure that you're getting high quality macronutrients, like for example, high quality protein, high quality carbs, high quality fats. Now, of course, carbs and fats play a really good energy source as well when you're trying to push yourself a little bit harder in the gym. So please bear in mind, don't skimp on those in any way, shape or form. Protein, so you can improve muscle building and you can allow your muscles to build and rebuild on a much higher quality level. One of the last points I want to make before we're going to end this video, because like I said, we've covered quite a bit. We've covered why overtraining is a very huge problem when it comes to your training. We've covered the adequate amount of rest in between. We've covered the science adaptations, but we've also covered the nutrition as well as the sleep and why that is so important when we're trying to rest and recover. Now, one of the last points that I want to make to somehow improve your recovery as well as improve your resting quality is that try to do active recoveries. Now, you can, if you wanted to, in between every and all sets, do some form of stretching, whether it's doing some movement, walking around, allowing your body to kind of come back to a rhythm again. But also, you can also dedicate a day where you just come in on maybe a weekend or maybe on an off day when you're not training and you're just doing some form of active recovery. That could be swimming, a light jog. It could be just doing some mobility, some yoga, some stretching. You can even do this at home. Active recovery is going to help you improve the quality of the muscle and also improve your recovery on a much more further scale. So also remember that active recovery will help you a lot. It's helped me, and I do hope it will help you. So give that a go. Now, the real question is that how do we balance the rest as well as the training intensity? And I've got this on my notes as well, so do bear with me. But how do we balance, right, the training quality, the training intensity, if you will, as well as the rest? How, right? And to that, I'm literally going to say is to know your limits. You have to learn where your limits are going to lie. Sometimes a party's going to want to push past it. Once again, I've stressed earlier, you're not a bodybuilder. You're probably going to be an average Joe like myself, or just a mere mortal like me, and the rest of others, everyone in the world who wants to do this naturally. And you're going to have to give yourself time. So you have to know your limits, know your threshold, if you will. All right. Everybody in a state is different. So what might work for someone else, or what might work for a friend of yours, or what might work for a colleague of yours, might not be the same for you. So you also have to be relative to the individual as well. So do bear that in mind, especially when you're trying to rest and recover. Now, if there's going to be a key takeaway from this video, is that one thing I do want you to remember, and I want you to please remember this: the rest is not a luxury, it is a non-negotiable. You have to rest and recover to perform at your best. And if you're adamant, truly adamant on building muscle, you also have to remember that. By you taking your rest, and you rest and recover properly, watch how the gains come. Like, you're going to skyrocket so much, not just in strength, not just in muscle building, but just in longevity, just for your health alone. It's going to play such a big role. And trust me, as a dad of two, as a parent myself and whatnot, for me to be able to recover at my best and to be able to perform at my best is going to be allowing me to live longer, feel better, and perform better. Now, I'm going to wrap up this video. So I do want to say thank you if you have watched it all the way to the end. I do appreciate that. I do tend to waffle. I do have to stress that. Sometimes I know how to speak off naturally. Others require a little bit more time where I have to bullet point them. So you'll see throughout the video, I might have to go back to my phone a lot, and I've had to, reread the bullet points just so I know what I'm talking about, even though I've got the knowledge in my head. But like I said, I tend to waff and kind of go into a bit of a tangent. So for that, if you've watched it all the way to the video, all the way to the end, I do sincerely appreciate it. It means a lot. But of course, if you're someone who's experienced bad recovery, you've not rested well enough, and you would love to share that, put that in the comment below. I want to have that conversation with you guys. I want to know that more about you, because once again, you guys are my community. So I want to be able to share that. I want to be able to learn that from you. And if it's something specific that's hindering you, comment below. Let me know as well, so I can give you some advice. I can give you some tips and tricks. And of course, you'll find me on my social media as well, so I'll put that on the description below, as well as in the video somewhere if I can. And drop me a follow, share your thoughts. And as always, thank you for watching the video. Thank you for spending some time at your busy day watching this video. As always, like, comment, and subscribe. Press that notification bell so you can always be told, so you always know when the next video is going to arrive. And as always, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Once again, super appreciate it. I'll see you guys soon. Peace.